everyone, welcome to Think Big Talks. I'm Jorell Legaspi. In celebration of National Arts Month, our conversation explores the interesting field of art education, its current presence and relevance in the Philippine context, and how it contributes to the growth of individual students and our society as a whole. I've spent many years of my career managing arts programs and pursuing my own creative projects. Working with local and international cultural organizations and museums, I've experienced the transformative impact of art engagement in diverse communities. To enlighten us with their own perspectives and experiences, we are joined by an inspiring group of teachers who are actively shaping how our art education is applied in our schools today. First up, we have the founder of ARTguro Philippines, an initiative that supports teachers and inspires the development of art education in the Philippines. A multi-awarded graduate of the UP College of Fine Arts, she is also a practicing artist and visual arts educator, spanning a teaching career of nearly 20 years, both here and abroad. She has developed subjects for Philippine K-12 curriculum in the art and design track and is currently the senior high school principal of the SOFA Design Institute. Please welcome Ms. Cathy Lasam Ballo.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Hi, Jorell. Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us, Ms. Cathy. Our next guest is an artist and senior high school teacher at the Regional Lead School for the Arts in Angono, Rizal. He has a master's in technician education, major in drafting for technology from the Marikina Polytechnic College. In addition to being an assessor at TESDA, he actively contributes his expertise in curriculum and learning management in the Calabarzon area. Please welcome Mr. Anthony Manota.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. Thank you for introducing me.
And finally, we have a visual and performing arts specialist with over 15 years of experience teaching at middle school, high school, and university levels. She is an alumna of the UP College of Fine Arts, Central St. Martin's in London, and the State University of New York. She loves to share her art-making process and her passion for exploring the world. Please welcome Ms. Carmel Lim Torres.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you again for joining us here on Think Big Talks. So our discussion revolves around the importance of art and education and how it impacts the lives of our students and the society at large. But first of all, can we please enlighten our viewers on what is art?
Oh, gosh, that's a hard question to answer, Jorel. Una pa lang, mahirap na agad. And the thing is, everybody defines art differently, I think. And actually, kunwari, if I ask someone, art ba to para sa'yo? For me, it might be art. For another person, pwedeng hindi kasi hindi sila nagagandahan, they don't find any value in it. And that is why it's hard to define, no? What is art really? But I think collectively, we all agree on something that can be called art if we appreciate it, if we find value in it, if we learn from it, if it allows us to communicate things we are unable to communicate by mere words, or yung mahirap sabihin pero naipapakita natin through a visual medium, then that can easily be something that can be called art. And I guess that's a very interesting thing to do and ask of others.
Where pretty much anything and everything can be considered art. Whereas if we look in the art history before, there were canons, there were galleries or institutions that dictate what is art. But because we are in today, we can have discourse, we can have debates, we can have expression, we can have community, we can have so many wonderful exchanges and connections with other people because of art.
Minsan kasi mayroong perception ng tao na yung art ay nasa visual lang talaga. No, maraming component yung arts. Even yung pagsayaw mo ay isang uri ng art yan. Pagkanta mo ay isang uri ng art yan. At ayun yung tinuturo namin in my school in SPA.
Right, that's really interesting. And also, am I right in thinking that art is a way of recording recording our own memories or recording whatever happens in our lives as creators, and that's where the expression comes from, because really it's the stimulus that drives you into creating something, right? And
Yeah,
it
I
becomes an
absolutely.
interpretation of your life or interpretation of a particular time in one's life. Is that correct?
I'd like to agree with that, definitely. And I like the term that you use, yung to record. It is
Mhm.
an evidence of what was happening to you, what you were thinking at the time, and what you were making at the time. And this is one of my favorite topics with my students, yung context of art, yung where did it come from? Why did you make art? Ano yung events socially that are happening around you that influenced you to make something?
We know the existence of the cavemen because
Mhm.
of the handprints,
Right.
of the tools they made, of, you know, these are all evidence of human technology, human creativity, interactive with their habitat and survival. So, quote unquote, art or artifacts, but yes, definitely a record of the times, like exactly what Ma'am Cathy said as well.
Should there always be creativity involved, or should there be a consciousness that one person is creating something that could be called art?
Actually, sir, when we do art, hindi naman talaga natin alam na ang ginagawa natin is art na eh. Then, pero po, dumadating sa point na makikita na lang natin, nare-realize natin, ay, this is an art. Of course, kasi nga, minsan wala naman talaga, katulad yan, for example po, ang isang taong emotional or depressed, minsan nakakagawa ng kanta, hindi natin alam. And then, yung mismong kanta na yan, considered as art. Yung ako katulad ko po, minsan kapag tawag dito, minsan po kapag ako ay may problema, dinadaan ko sa pagdodrawing. And yung pagkakataon na yun, that is considered as art. Well, hindi siya intentionally, pero andun pa rin yung art mismo.
I'm just curious kasi kanina Miss Carmel brought up all these canons, entities that dictate what art is today. So, you know, and there's also this confusion between what is art and what is craft, and can they be both? Kasi at school we're taught arts and crafts, but I don't want to use the word pero there's a little more highbrow kind of perception with regards to fine art and what is serious art. How do we distinguish art from craft?
Actually, sir, arts and crafts have always been closely linked and entwined. We often speak of arts and crafts as one discipline or activity, but they are not actually the same thing. Both art and crafts are forms of visual creativity, but they are not different in several reasons. Number one is art is a form of work that expresses emotions and expressions. Di ba? Katulad yan ang sabi ko sa inyo kanina. But craft is a form of work which has physical form, just like in molding and carving. Yan po, yung mga crafts. Then another thing is, while craft is quantified, art is seldom. Bakit? Kasi po, one can create or duplicate craft forms. Di ba? Nakakapag-create tayo ng mga crafts, which is not possible with arts, di ba? Because art forms move people emotionally, whereas craft attract people. Okay? Ayun po yung pagkakaiba ng dalawa. Then, in art, it is the emotion that flows out, whereas in craft, no emotion involved. Wala pong emosyon dun sa mismong craft. So, art comes out from a person's innate talents, whereas craft is a result of experience. Yun po, yun yung mga makakapagpa-distinguish kung ano yung pagkakaiba ng art at saka yung craft.
When you intend something for function or use, typically called na craft siya. Kasi ginawa mo siya with the intention of somebody to use this beautiful object. And for art, intention is not necessary. In my opinion, in my personal opinion, that you don't have to have a purpose when you make art because it could be a form of expression.
Yes.
Pero for me, just to quantify, hindi dapat tingnan natin na mas mababa or mas mataas ang one or the other, because certainly craft in itself has skills and techniques that artists do not have. And in the same way that there are techniques in art that craftsmen actually know but choose not to apply. So I think this is also one of the other notions na we have to challenge nowadays na mababa tingin sa craftsman. And yun nga yung quote-unquote na fine art is better. Pero I don't think that should be, because some crafts, like the local weaves of our culture, the oral traditions of our culture, pottery and all of that are considered mere, malaking quotation, mere craft, but actually they define who we are as Filipinos. It is part of our historical and cultural fabric. And so the distinguishment, I think yun nga, intention of creation, but in terms of valuing it, I don't think we should distinguish it.
Those are very, very important points to bring up, actually, which takes me to my next question. Who is this art for, and why should we care?
As a very proud Filipino, I think our heart is in our arts. If you look in each region, we have such rich, diverse, wonderful arts, crafts, in, like what Sir Anthony said, in music, in the movement, in the artifacts, in the weaving, in the oral traditions, in the tattooing. You know, we can go endlessly. And why is it so important for every Filipino, I think, is to remember how wonderfully precious, how wonderfully, what's the word? Unique, and how blessed we are with our wonderful resources of creativity, of flexibility, ingenuity, innovation. And so even though I don't speak Filipino very well, but I am a very proud Filipino, and that sometimes I feel that we are so exocentric. We want to always like what's from the other, but I feel like what we have inside is world class. And if we remember that as a Filipino nation, that we won't always look or feel less than, if any, equal and better than sometimes. And so I think all of us should care. But of course, we can't force anyone to care about art. But when we look around us, just in our everyday life, and acknowledge that arts and crafts and design and creativity has touched all of our lives directly, and having that acceptance and having that consciousness, hopefully will be a little window to understanding the value of our wonderful traditions.
That was beautifully said. Your students are so lucky to have you as their teachers. And this brings us to the next part of the conversation, is really touching on what art education is like in the Philippine environment. They could be art education in schools, or art education through social media, art education through online learning platforms. Where are we today, and how is art education being applied?
In my personal opinion, in an odd position as compared to other countries with how we deliver art education. Is there room to grow? Definitely. But I think we are on the right path. Because, for example, currently in the private school system, we do have art as one of the main subjects. Arts, music, and sometimes it is lumped in with health and PE. And in that regard, I think we have much to improve on, because I believe that all of these subjects have a right to be their own by themselves. No? Magkakahiwalay sana, in my opinion, ng music, arts, PE, and health. Sana hindi siya pinagsasama-sama. That said, it is a wonderful development that our senior high school programs and our junior high school programs have greatly improved in that regard, because we already offer arts and design track, technical vocational tracks, we even have humanities. So from my time as a student na HELE, oh my gosh, inabutan niyo yun, tawag pa doon HELE, Home Economics Learning Education, parang ganon, na infused ang art doon along with sewing, with cooking and all that. Ngayon, at least sineparate na siya so that it is a different educational path altogether. So marami pa tayong lalakbayin, pero I think we are on the right path.
In Angono, which is art capital of the Philippines, actually kino-consider yung school namin na private pero public po kami. Nakapokus po talaga kami sa mga skills ng bata with regards to arts. At the same time, hindi ko naman po kasi masasabi na yung mga estudyante namin ay academically skillful or excellent talaga sila. Pero nangyayari po na gumagaling sila. Why? Because kung ano yung art nila, kung ano yung skill nila dun sa art, ginagamit namin yon para ginagawa namin siyang strategy para mas maintindihan ng bata kung ano yung pinag-aaralan. So, honestly speaking, whether public or private man yung papasukan, whether art educator ka man or hindi, application of arts in strategies of teaching is very important.
Your experiences as artists yourselves have really helped you connect your feelings, your understanding of the world around you. How does that translate into your style of teaching your students?
I teach a wide range of ages, and I notice sometimes I have students from 5 years old all the way to 80 years old. Some of them are like, I love art, I can do whatever I like, bam, easy. And I have other people who are like, I hate art, tell me what to do, give me a definite answer. I'm a failure, you know? And so that's a wide spectrum. And so as a teacher, my job is to bring out the confidence, bring out the joy that art and the process of discovery, reflection, playing with the art elements and principles, very simple things. And so when I actually I acknowledge where they're at, number one. And so I also say, you know what? I also make art. And sometimes my art looks like poo-poo, you know? Some days it just looks like trash. And that's part of the process. And when you go into a museum, you'll see these masterpieces, but you didn't see their drafts. We don't see their studies. We didn't see all the paintings underneath it, you know? So there is a whole story behind these masterpieces that we see in institutions where sometimes, especially if, you know, they have like perfectionism in their mind, they're like, when I draw this, it's gonna look perfect. And so we have to remind them, what is perfect in the end? What is it? Because I don't like to say there is or there's not, that's not me to say, but what is it to you and me? And then the next thing is, it's part of the process. We will have days that we will make poo-poo art, and those days will strengthen our skills and our knowledge to make the better works. So again, I'm like really much into the process where all of us, and it's not just the arts, it's a human development, isn't it? Anything we do, we have to fail a little bit. And it's learning to fail well and to learn from it, to improve from it, to not bring us down, but to make us better and improve what we do.
Learning to fail well. Wow, okay, I'm gonna keep that in mind. You know, I would imagine that students would feel more pressure in delivering and really trying to be good at what they do in order to reach certain grades or to make their parents happy. There's just so many different factors that affect how children perform in schools. Do you have any stories that you can share with us with regards to this?
I was just saying, like, it really depends on the standards or the requirements or the expectations, so that the student, before they actually start their process, they know what's expected of them. Because I think, I could be wrong, but I have a belief that all our students want to be successful. They all want to do their best, you know? They really, really want to get a good grade, quote unquote. So if we equip them with a very clear objectives of what the unit or the project entails, then that's the first step, that it's achievable. Again, it's varied, right? How we assess is varied throughout establishments, throughout grade levels, throughout divisions. But again, if the child knows what is expected of them, I think they will try their best to achieve it. Also though, because we were talking about art and all this big, beautiful ideas, But art in the academic setting does have specific parameters because we are teaching them specific skills or specific goals. So that also has to be reminded that we're not trying to diminish their expression sometimes when we are doing technical activities, but we have to always be explicit and explain what we're doing and why. Does that make sense? So I feel like we just have to be a lot more clear, because I feel like as educators, we're not against the students. If anything, we want every student to be successful. We want them to do their best and feel confident when they finish their work.
Yeah, I think to add to that, is that when they turn out work which is meaningful to them, so it is difficult to assign a score for that. But I think what art education does is it shifts the perception of students in understanding that they are not defined by the scores that they achieve.
Yes.
It is like what Miss Carmel said, it is the journey of learning, possibly failing, relearning, and then finally succeeding. And from experience, a lot of our students, or my students anyway, when that clicks in their head, it is a life skill actually that is valuable. And I've seen it in my classrooms, the shift from being like, oh, I need to get a 99, I need to get a 95. When the student is like that, they're only focused on the quantitative score, which is what we are trained to be anyway, di ba? Habang lumalaki tayo, titingnan yung score mo, yung report card mo ni mommy or daddy, and then say, oh gosh, may below 85 ka, anak. And that is what we're trying to shift. The perspective that your child or your own value is defined by numbers. And when that shifts, it's wonderful to see. Kasi yung student mismo magre-reflect sa'yo or magsasabi sa'yo na, you know what, miss? Okay lang kung it didn't meet the parameter, but I learned how to, for example, sculpt with paper clay when hindi naman ako marunong before. I learned to solve problems, and I learned to get past my difficulty and get over myself. So it also teaches them grit, which our students need now. Diba? Lalo na now, it's a pandemic. Kailangan na kailangan nila ng grit. And that small success or these little victories that we are able to give our students, walang katumbas na score yon.
Totally agree with what Ms. Cathy said, but I'm also thinking in a curricular design standpoint. You know, when we as educators design our units, our projects, I wish there would be that would take those small victories that are so important, that will take them on into adulthood and make them the pivoters that we need today. I wish we could embed that within our curriculum where it's not incidental, it's totally intentional as educators, where we could be like, problem solving, you showed evidence of it, you know, like it is an actual data. So I wish there was also the shift in us in designing our curricular assessments as well, to really make it for the parents as well, that those are fundamentals and lifelong learnings that are essential for us.
Practical life skills, you know, it's like, how do you deal with pressure? How creative can you be in pivoting, whether it's during a pandemic or a financial downturn? You know, with all these in mind, I'm sure the COVID-19 pandemic that the entire world has experienced over the past couple of years has also changed the way you design your classes for your students. So could you share a little bit of that experience with us?
Honestly speaking, napakahirap. Hindi lang sa akin, lahat tayo dito nakaranas na kung paano tayo mag-iiba ng estratehiya mula doon sa mismong normal class, yung face-to-face, hanggang doon sa virtual learning. Kasi ako, as an art teacher sa visual, hands-on talaga kami. Napakahirap talaga. Then meron akong hawak ng mga estudyante na the apprenticeship. Di ba kapag sinabi nating apprenticeship, dapat pupunta sa company para talaga mag-hands-on. Kaso hindi pwede, bawal. isang napakalaking bawal. So napakahirap para sa amin. Kailangan talaga siguro hindi lang yung tawag dito, advice ng teacher or advice ng isang mentor, kundi yung mismong initiative na rin siguro ng bata para doon. Kasi sabi nga nila, practice makes perfect. Di ba? Kung yung bata mismo may initiative na mag-practice, although ang hirap talaga kasi nga malayo kami, hindi namin sila masupervise. Masusupervise lang namin sila through online, hindi ba? Napakahirap po nung pinagdaanan namin bilang ako as an art teacher, na i-apply natin dito sa paggawa nila ng mga artworks, ganun.
We learned other ways of and other outlets or sources of our inspiration, and we just needed to, kumbaga, bridge that transition. Kasi napilitan tayo to cross that bridge. So, syempre, pag napilitan, hindi tayo masaya. But nung naka-cross na tayo, biglang everybody was like, okay, I can work with this. And I'd like to think that the students now, this year, are doing much better than the students last year in early 2020. And what has changed is that they embrace this new medium now.
Yeah.
And in turn, yung dating hindi masyadong techie na teacher, myself included, I've learned how to adapt technology in order to get the yung parang yung kiliti ng mga bata so that they would be interested in my classes and that they would participate. And I think it was a life lesson also for many educators, not only our teachers, no, in that talagang kailangan we hold true to our promise that we keep learning. And that was really a transformative year, whether we want to see it in a positive light or in a negative light. Either way, in my opinion, I think a lot of us benefited, in fact, from this change.
Again, if we look at the development of each child and the expectations of that age group, so social life is a huge, huge part of their human development. It's not just them being maarte, it's really part of them developing their own identity as individuals. And so sometimes as parents, sometimes as adults, we forget to acknowledge that what they are craving for is not them being annoying. It's science, it's chemistry, it's biology. So we have to really acknowledge again and let them know, you know what you're going through is really tough. And sometimes you can even go through it scientifically and go, you know, those chemicals, those hormones, that's kind of making you a little angry right now. And I kind of get it. So you can have some alone time. And so again, like what Miss Cathy said, like, it's really, we are in these closed spaces, but because we're in their closed spaces, we're more closer with our family. We're learning a lot more about ourselves. Introverts like me are actually enjoying not going out and dealing with actual people, you know? So there are some positives amidst all the limitations. But yes, I think feeling and understanding what these kids are going through, not babying them at all. Like if they are misbehaving, then it's misbehavior, but understanding that what they are yearning for is very, very valid.
And that also teaches them grit. What Miss Cathy also brought up earlier. It's not just mind and emotional resilience. It's really just learning to deal with things and just also being practical.
Exactly. And us talking about, hey, I'm also struggling. Like I'm modeling to you what I would like your behavior to be like. I am also struggling with you, and this is my processing, and these are my options. And I would like you to also try this out, and maybe it'll help you, you know? So we're also equipping them for strategies for better well-being and balance in their lives.
Kung tutuusin, ang daming mga positive na nangyari. Una sa lahat, ako personally, karaniwan dun sa mga magulang dati, hinahayaan nila na ang teacher ang magturo sa bata. Especially mga kindergarten, hindi po ba? Pero nung nagkaroon ng pandemya, bumalik po yung dating tradisyon ng mga Pilipino na ang mga magulang ang nagtuturo sa bata. At yun naman talaga dapat kasi sila ang unang guro, di ba, ng mga bata. So ang dami pong mga positive effects din talaga na nangyari during the pandemya. Hindi natin dapat tingnan yung mga negative effects. Ang kailangan lang natin is i-accept to kasi wala nang tayong magagawa dito. Kumbaga, ang kailangan lang natin tingnan yung positibong epekto nito sa atin.
Tama. Sa sinabi niyo po, medyo kinalabutan ako kasi naalala ko pa talaga yung nanay ko din po ay naging teacher ko din sa bahay. So kumbaga lahat po tayong mga guro, kayo po ay katuwang ng mga magulang.
Mhm.
At tama din po kayo na dahil po sa pandemya at maraming na-force na manatili sa kanilang mga tahanan, nagkaroon po ng pagkakataon ng mga magulang na mag-reconnect sa kanilang mga anak. So that's one of the good things that came out of this situation that we found ourselves in. What creative ways did you apply para ma-pivot po yung pag-aaral sa pagdating sa art?
When you teach painting, you sometimes would hold the brush with the student to show them how a certain stroke is made or how a certain painting technique is done. And now, how do you teach that nga ba, di ba? And we learned a lot from social media, in my opinion, I think. And again, another silver lining, because social media is something that our students consumed all the time. And I think social media changed because of this whole thing, thanks to education as well, because the teachers learned how to use Facebook for education. They learned how to use Instagram, which was what we did. Kasi we knew the kids loved Instagram. So we had them put their exhibits on Instagram. And in turn, they learned how to market, how to brand themselves, how to create and have a more public persona. And maraming in turn silang natutunan versus just learning it if we were face-to-face. They wouldn't have learned all of that. And other ways that we have dealt with this pandemic is that we tuned into things that the students really loved. And we used art to catch their attention again. We applied art in the sciences. We applied arts in English. We applied arts in maths. And for our school, that was something that the kids were like, okay, pwede naman pala. Why did we, before the pandemic. And because of that, the kids learned how to do linear vectors and tessellations and whatever using math plus art plus. And in addition to that, we challenge them to talk about what is meaningful for them, what they wish to change in the world, what's hurting them, who they are as Filipinos. And if you see, no, tatlong magkakaibang bagay siya, but thanks to art, nag-glue siya together, and the output of the kids became much more meaningful. And again, this is thanks to being thrust into this situation. The teachers were forced to work together. And I asked them to work together to come up with something that will engage our students again and have them reconnect and want to come to class. Because yun din, attendance yung problema. Ayaw nila mag-attend. Kasi, why would I attend? Nasa room lang ako, on ko lang yung laptop. Parang, di ba, it's not like before there was a whole ritual of getting up, magbe-breakfast ako, bibisa ko ng gusto kong outfit for school, I'll ride the car, or mag-jeep ako, dadating ako sa school, I'll meet my classmates. Now, wala lahat yon, no? And engagement in the classroom has become, I think, a prevalent problem, not only in the Philippines, but worldwide, no? And art was one of the solutions, arts and music.
And I think, like what you said, we were so busy. We were so busy with busyness of everything that, when we had to just pause and do this crazy change that we were forced into, like what Sir Anthony said, like we have no choice. We had no choice but to survive and hopefully thrive. And so we got to know our kids, we got to know ourselves, we got to know our family. For me as an art educator, I'm learning my own energies a lot better. There's a lot of pacing. Again, because of social media, I'm finding different ways and methods to show and to connect. So even though you said we are in imaginary or our own distant spaces, we do share right now. We are sharing this time, space, and energy together on Zoom. So I think it's it's still energy transferred, you know.
It also brings the word focus on the screen that's in front of us, trying the hardest we could to connect, although virtually, but trying to connect in the most human way possible.
Meron pang isang naging challenging talaga sa amin. Ako bilang art teacher, isa sa challenging namin, kapag nasa art ka kasi, kung hands-on yan, tapos nasa school kami, meron kaming mga materials na pwedeng hiramin sa mismong eskwelahan. Ang problema dito kasi is yung mga bata na wala silang materials kasi nando sila sa kanilang mga tahanan. So, definitely, iisipin ni teacher, ano ba yung mga gamit na pwede nilang magamit? Tapos, at the same time, yung output ba nito ay same dun sa output ng original na materials? Di po ba? Para ang hirap kasi. So, ang tendency, kami bilang teacher, nagbababa kami ng standard para lang makita lang namin kung nakakagawa ba yung bata na nadidevelop ba yung kanyang skills pagdating dito sa competency na to. Napakahirap po na ang teacher merong gamit, dinidiscuss ng maayos kahit virtually, pero ang estudyante walang magamit. Nakakadurog ng puso na gustong-gusto nila gumawa, pero hindi sila makagawa kasi wala. So ang tendency, kailangan maging resourceful si teacher kung ano dapat yung ibigay nilang halimbawang materialis para makagawa lang yung bata.
Wow.
Yun, napaka-challenging po nun.
Paano kaya natin matutulungan, makultivate ang art education, especially sa mga lugar na sa mga lugar na underserved, sa mga lugar na nangangailangan talaga ng suporta?
So I'm speaking completely theoretically. I haven't done this in practice yet, but in theory, one of the solutions I might pose and offer is, rather than having the expectation of the past, focusing on the conceptual understandings and connections that are beyond material, you know, beyond the physical. So for example, maybe they had a unit that they had to do combine art history with making a product. I don't know if that would, you know, they would have to look at something from the past to create something in the present. So that process, it can be limited if they don't have internet connection. It can be limited because they don't have access to resources, books, right? So what are the solutions we can offer them? Go talk to somebody, you know, in your house. Do you have someone older than you? Did they see something? Did they hear something? You know what I mean? So it opens up the idea of what is art or a creative expression. And it also kind of opens up art in the sense that you can talk to just anybody about it. It's not for the specialists. It's not for the experts. Art is very much alive in our lives, even though we're not aware of it. You know, when we listen to music, is that some kind of art? When we look at that billboard outside, does that have some sense of design? So using our everyday experience as maybe a prompt rather than the prompts of the past might, again, these are all in theory. I have not practiced this yet in a wide scale, but I've done it in a small scale. And usually when I pose that to students, they kind of go, "Oh nga, no? Complementary colors pala yun." You know, they're like, "Whoa, color theory." And so they're like, "Oh, so these things were actually considered and actually composed and were actually designed. They had intention. This mug, this bottle, they had intention of something." So that's, I know, amidst the limitations, I feel like, again, I could be looking at the world with my rose-colored frames. But I feel like everywhere we look, there is design and art intended in almost everything we use. So that could be the start of prompts. For the products, again, it teaches us resourcefulness and grit. So Instagram, there's artists who draw on dirty windows. There are right? There are artists that use leaves to construct sculpture. There are artists that make video about their situation. So the output is quite infinite. But again, in our curricular understanding and assessments, I think that's a whole other animal that is a very complex rubrics to solve.
So what kind of support can ARTguro Philippines provide aspiring or even practicing art educators today?
ARTguro actually came from the difficulties of the pandemic, of me wanting to connect with other art teachers, feeling the same way, the difficulties, the challenges that we talked about. And one of the primary reasons of putting together a group is so that we have an emotional support first and foremost. We are able to help each other, and we are able to share with each other what worked in our classrooms. I really don't believe in the school versus school kind of thought na mas magaling kasi yung school namin, so dapat secret namin yung technique. I really believe in, if this worked in my classroom, I'm more than willing to share it for other teachers, because sino magbe-benefit? It's our students, and ultimately it's our love for our students. That's why we're in the teaching profession, di ba? And ARTguro does that in a community. The teachers are there to share opportunities. Pag may nakitang good webinars, we share it with each other. When we see opportunities to help each other out, we share it with each other. We discuss ways that we can improve ourselves. We also just chika between ourselves, a nice way of connecting with others. Meron kang kausap about your own difficulties, and that has blossomed into further projects in really realizing that, wait, if I want to help art educators, then we must help each other in more than just talking about our difficulties. So this is where ARTguro comes in that we look for opportunities actively to funnel towards our teachers, such as scholarships and funding towards their own professional development. And in that sense, with the ultimate goal of strengthening not only art education, but arts in education.
Actually, sir, yun sa amin yung support for the community. Bawal pa kasi talaga as a teacher at saka yung mga students, bawal pa kasi talaga pumunta sila sa eskwelahan. But then, every Saturday, meron akong mga estudyante, grade 12 students, senior high school visual arts, na nagkakandak sila ng mga seminars, webinars regarding that. Tapos, hindi lang siya naka-close dun sa estudyante dun sa eskwelahan namin, kundi pati dun sa mga estudyante like elementary students, nagtuturo sila ng ganon through online lang. So I think that is one of the support from the community na mabibilang naman talaga natin, kasi nga sa ngayon napakahirap bilang DepEd teacher, public teacher na lumabas at saka yung mga bata palabasin, bawal talaga. Pero kahit paano sa ganung paraan nakakatulong naman.
And I think to add to that, no, to what Sir Anthony said, because of the connections of ARTguro, we all met each other. And actually now we have a running scholarship, which we would like to invite others for. It's called Learning That Transfers. And I think Carmel can talk more about it. And we are offering currently 2 full scholarships for 2 international workshops for art educators.
We have 2 scholarships with ARTguro, completely funded, free. If you check out the Facebook page, the information is there. And I'm leading it with Julie Stern. So I'm really excited, and I hope all these things that I keep on talking about, connections and holistic learning, that's really what the course is about really remembering why we're teaching art and drama and music and all these wonderful visual and performing arts.
Right. So is this community only open to art educators, or who else can be part of this group?
It's open to everyone. We have actually members who are moms and dads and teachers from other subjects, which I really, really encourage, because we have science teachers or English homeschoolers who learn art techniques that we have been sharing in the Facebook groups and on the page, because yeah, it's a growing community of people who recognize that they can use arts in their own practice. So we have mommy homeschoolers who have messaged me saying thank you for sharing this particular opportunity. They learned how to teach this to their kids. Kasi before nga, di ba, hindi naman sila yung magtuturo. It would be the teachers.
That's great to know that anyone can join ARTguro. So really, art is for everyone, right? Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. And if we hope to teach our kids and ourselves to be ready for whatever this pandemic brings to us in 2022 and the years beyond, because I really think that the landscape of education has completely changed. I'm of the opinion that we will not completely return to face-to-face learning lang. There will be now many more channels for education to happen. And I think this is the right direction, recognizing art culture and the arts towards really improving the quality of education for the Filipino students so that we are competitive globally.
Wow. Well, it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you today, and we thank you for sharing your experience with our viewers. We look forward to hearing more exciting updates on the important work that you do, and we wish you all the best in your projects.
Thank you so much, Jorell, for having us. I think we had an awesome time. I love talking about art and education, obviously, and we truly appreciate the medium and the audience that you have given.
And this has been another insightful edition of Think Big Talks. We hope you'll join us again next time in conversations that seek to inspire growth and spark great ideas. Always remember, think big and dream big.